Francesco, very good to have you on this. It's we've known each other for 11 years now. We started touring together, and like, I usually I don't want to do introductions, but you are working in a field where you are largely invisible to the people that are coming to concerts. But you're the one responsible for setting them up, for organizing everything around them. And I mean, I'll let you explain more about that. But I feel very fortunate that I know you, and I've learned so much about about life in general, observing what you do.
Well, thank you. It's actually well. First of all, thank you for having me here. Yeah, it's actually it's the invisible job. Most people don't see it, but um, there's always someone behind the scene organizing and putting shows together and making it work. And wow, yeah, we've been knowing each other since when it was 11 years now, 10 years. So we've been doing quite some tours together with Stickman, with Crimson Project. So and actually, I don't know about you, but for me, when we met, that was right at the beginning of my career. Before, I think 2011 is the year when I quit. I was already doing this job for a company, but that is the year when I quit the job and I started my own company and I went completely on my own. So from that moment on, it's been a continuous learning about this job, because really is not a job that someone you don't go to school and someone tells you how to book tours and how to manage a tour. You just learn it from yourself or from somebody who teach you on the road. But it's mainly all about being out on the road and experience, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really need to experience it in real life to understand what is needed for that job. And it's also not
Yeah,
just
you
one
need
job; it's many different jobs, right?
yeah. Well, actually, what I'm doing, it's mainly two jobs. Is normally you have, because I book the tours. So I book the shows and I put them all together and I build the itinerary of a tour, and then I tour manage them, which is a different job. Normally you have one booking agent and one tour manager, so it's two separate jobs. But in my case, I figured I started as a tour manager, as a freelance tour manager, and doing this job, I got a lot of connections with promoters all around Europe. So I decided to start my own booking agency at some point, and uh, and that's how actually also started to book shows. Uh,
So, Francesco, before that, what did you do
yes,
before that?
I so let me move. Sorry, I have a power problem. Okay, should be fixed now. I always worked in the live music field all the time since ever. I started as I was working in Rio. I was the guy doing the night shift, doing the weekend shift, and that's how I started. Then at some point, we were someone needed a tech for a small tour, so I went out as a tech, and I loved it. I really found it amazing to go on tour. And from then, I think one of the very first international tour I did was with Tony Levin back in 2006. He was out with the Tony Levin band, and the agency was organizing the tour. They knew me. They needed so they asked me to do the tour as a tech. So that's how I met Tony the first time, and then I don't even know how I. At some point, I just switched from being a tech to being a tour manager. I think the tour with Tony was taught me a lot about tours and about this job. I think after that tour, Jim Weider when came on tour in Europe and he needed a tour manager and Tony gave him my contact. I think that was the very first tour I did as a tour manager. It wasn't me booking it. I was just out on the road with the band. But that's probably the first one I did. That was back in 2007. And then I just
And were you driving? Were you driving then, or what was?
I was driving the van. I was the only one with the band. It was just the band and me. We didn't even have a sound engineer on the tour. There was 4 or 5 guys in the band and me in a van driving around Europe, playing shows, and I found it amazing. I mean, it was the best thing I could imagine. I wanted to do, traveling and being involved with music. This is a combination of my passions, so I couldn't think of anything better than that. And from that moment, it was just carry on and keep doing it. Started to work with new bands, with new artists, which is basically what I'm keep doing it now. In the meantime, when I started, when I went on my own and started my own company back in 2011, money was a big struggle because I started from zero, so I had no job, not many tours, and at the time I also had a health situation that prevented me to work for like 4 months. So I started to drive tour buses. So I was driving buses for, let's say, 3 4 months in a year, and that would give me enough money to cover for the rest of the year and to let me do the job as a tour manager and as a booking agent, even if those tours were not paying very well. And I kept doing this for probably 5 years until 2016, and that was a great way to learn this job because I was driving tour buses for bands from all over, Europe or United States on tour in Europe. So I was thrown into this bigger production, from stadium tours to big clubs to theaters, any sort of production, and that was a great way to make some experience. Just be there and look how things are done in the professional world, because until that time I was just me driving a van and with not a real clue of what was going on. So that was very important for me to learn, and it helped me to make new contacts. Like one of the bands that I drove, that was back in 2014. I drove this American rock band called Skillet, and I drove them for a couple of tours in Europe. And after that, they asked me to work, to take a different position. So I did a few tours with them as a merchandiser in the States, and then as a production assistant, as a VIP coordinator, because we have these VIP tickets. And that was also a great experience. And so I made my experience, let's say, baggage, bigger and bigger. And, now 10 years later, I can do it on my own, things that I've been watching for quite some years when I was just driving bus.
Yeah, I find it wonderful that, in my view, you are a real artist, like an artist in the sense as you described. So you did some other job in order to be able to follow your passion to book shows. And you know the business inside out from many, many perspectives. And I also know that initially you were, and you're still a bass player, right? So you even know the position of the musician. And it's like it. I think this is really the proper way to run a business. Like, you need to know every little detail. Obviously, then at some point you can let other people do their work. You don't need to control them, but you have the knowledge.
Yes, exactly, and that knowledge helps you to uh, to. I mean, for me, all that knowledge helps me to uh, do a better job. As I know what it means to drive a bus, or to do merchandise, or to be a tech, or to be a musician, I can get a better understanding of what are the needs of our bus driver, or our merchandise guys, or the band itself. Um, even if my experience as a musician is a very small experience, nothing comparable to anything that I'm doing now, but it makes me understand what it means to be on a stage, and what are the actual needs for musicians when they are on stage and when they are on tour. That doesn't mean that I'm always able to uh, you know do the right job, because sometimes it's just you have to find compromises all the time. Um, but
you know I No, I only saw you last week here in Berlin, when you were here with Pineapple Thief, and there was a really wonderful moment before the show started where you were on the stage, and obviously, like, nobody knows who you are. But from my perspective, like, looking at the stage and seeing you on the stage, I really made me smile, because, okay, so there's maybe like the most important person of this whole thing is there on stage. Nobody cares. And I think that is just one in a way a wonderful position to be in, because you are very important and you can do your work. You're like in the second line, right? You're not in the front line, and it's sort of like a very I don't know. It's a very special position to be in, and I kind of like that as well. Like, when I'm producing an album for somebody else, for example, right? Like, it's not about me. It's not about, but I can do my best work, like, or I can do a lot of really great work when it's not my face that's on the cover, if you know what I
yeah,
mean. You know?
yeah. Well, my face was really never on any cover, so I don't know what is being
Uh,
on the cover, your face on the cover. But yeah, I
mhm.
found it very, very. I found myself very comfortable in this position. Second line. Um, no one knows who am I, what I'm doing, and probably puts me in the in a more safe environment. um, but it's also, I also have to keep in mind, it is very important for me to keep in mind that everything that I do reflects on the band, on the artist image. Because if I fuck up something, is the band that is the one that uh, is going to be blamed. If the sound is not good, if there's anything that um, put the band in the wrong place, and they're not able to play the show, they are in the conditions, in the right conditions, um, then for the audience, it's not because, their agent or their tour manager uh, mess it up, and now they're playing a bad show because of that. For the audience is, oh, they played a bad show. So I'm always extremely conscious that whatever I do, it reflects on the artist and the perception that the audience have of that artist. And I know what you're thinking now, because we did a lot of really bad gigs with Stickman back in the days, especially at the beginning. So I keep learning this.
I really have to tell you that from the perspective of me as a musician, just the fact that I can play, that there is an opportunity to play, it really already makes me happy. So like, even if the gig is shitty, there's always that moment where we're on stage and we're playing, and that kind of like makes up for a lot of shit.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when the show goes well, and the artist is happy on stage, they are able to play the to to bring on stage their music at the best level, even if the stage is not the best one, even if the hotel is not the best one, even if the travel was horrible. That's all that matters. But this is really because you are a professional, and 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 you are able to you play music because you love to play music, and that makes a huge difference. Um, Especially when you have, I've been working with other artists that were probably not there because of the music. They were there because of show off themselves on stage. And so all the little things around, like all the hotel, the food, the stage, the place where they play, affected a lot and put them in the wrong mood for the show, just because they were not there to play music. I think this is a huge difference between real musicians and just people who plays and want to show off. And I'm not saying that they're not good. I'm saying that it's just a different. They're driven by a different
It's a different motivation.
motivation. Exactly. And I was
Yeah.
very lucky in my career to be able to work with musicians, real musicians, and like you, like Tony, like Pineapple Thief, like I don't know if I was just lucky or what, but I always found myself working with real musicians, and that really made things a lot easier for me, because I know I'm fucking up sometimes, and that helps me because at the end, um, music is the most important thing, and the music that is going to get performed on stage is the most important thing. It's not the hotel, it's not the dinner, it's not how luxury is the band you're traveling on.
Mhm. So what would you say? Like, you were saying that it's very important for you to make sure that the experience is right for the musicians, like, and the circumstances are right for the musicians. So what would you say is the most important, like, really from your perspective, for the audience? Like, what gives the audience the best experience, and what kind of control do you have?
Well, I would say first of all the sound, um, but there's a lot of things that are connected to that, because uh, probably probably as an audience, the first thing I look at, I when I go to a gig, I think the sound is the most important thing. So obviously, everything that is connected to the sound plays a very important role. So the equipment that is being used, that has to be the right one. The stage, the PA, That's probably my first focus. Then the second focus is if the band on that um, on that stage, on that specific stage, is able to comfortably play. If the stage is too small, or it doesn't sound right, or if they have audience in, surrounded by audience, or positions that makes them feel uncomfortable, that also affect the way the musicians play, because maybe they are distracted by something, and they can't be focused 100% on what are they playing. Like, I don't know, very stupid example. You often see photographers at the shows, and those photographers are often very distracting for the band on stage. And this is something that many of them, many photographers, many people don't understand, and they can really be distracting. You playing on stage, and you have someone just 20 centimeters from you with this camera moving, and then they cross each other. It's very extremely distracting. So something and it's also distracting for the audience, for especially the people in the first rows. They've been there, they've been queuing up early in advance to be in the first row, and then they have these people in front of them ruining their connection with the band on stage. But on the other side, it's also important to have photographers, to have someone who takes photos during the show. So as always, you need to find the right balance. So let them take photos, but at the same time, put a limit on what they're doing. So like normally, the standard for me is like photos only on the first 3 songs. Many of them they don't understand, but it's also the same for people who film the shows, because it can be very destructive for musicians on stage when there's somebody there with first line with a phone like that all the show. It's
So, but in other words, maybe it's your job in a way is about finding compromises, right? Also, like
yeah,
you need to figure out like how can I give space to the photographers because we need them, we need the press, right? And how can we give the audience a good experience, like even from and I know that maybe you can't control that 100%, but even from the way that they're being led into the theater, right?
Yeah.
Like and stuff like that, and but everything seems, I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you're kind of negotiating all the time.
Yeah, it's a constant compromise from the way you deal with photographers to the way you deal with the budget, with any expenses you have on the tour, because a tour is an expensive machine, depending on the size. But even a small tour in a band with just the band, the sound guy, and a tour manager it has expenses, and it's a constant compromise. You want to get that hotel which is close to the venue and there's a safe parking, but it's really expensive. So there's always something that you have to deal with, and to find the right compromise with the people, with the promoters, with the budget, with the photographers. So it's literally the man in between. That's my position.
Yes,
Man in between.
So how do you deal with, say, the financial situation with a tour, let's say? So, for example, you make your calculation at the beginning and you kind of like, no, okay, well, I'm expecting this kind of money to come in. and then you see like the constant expenses that you have. Are
Yeah.
you keeping track of things like at any point in the process? Like, so
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
do you want to know if the tour may not make money? Do you want to know that even like halfway through the tour, or is that something that you're like always looking at the full package, like kind of like because it may also be a motivational factor. Like if the
Yeah.
band learns, for example, that they're not going to make money on a tour, you don't necessarily want to tell them
Yeah.
1 week into the tour, right?
Yes, right. Well, this is something that I learned. This is probably the one of the most important part that I've learned in these years. Because when I started, it was just like you book the shows. Okay, this show is gonna pay X amount. Okay, then you book the next show. That show is gonna pay X amount. You put them together. You try to keep the cost under control, but and whatever is left goes to the band, or depending on the deal. But I had tours where, I mean, most at the beginning I wasn't doing any calculation. I was just going and hope that it will work financially. I mean, obviously, I knew that the money that was coming from the show, it was good enough to cover the cost and pay the band. But I ended up doing tours where it wasn't good enough. So I lost money myself in certain situation, or the band lost money. So that put me in the position to start working on numbers in advance and try to do to set up a business plan. Now I am a complete nerd. I'd like to show you my spreadsheet. because now it's I mean I and it's helping me a lot, because when I book a show and I get the offers, um, I build up this spreadsheet where I put all the numbers in, I put all the costs in, even if are just provisional cost. I know how much is gonna roughly cost a tour bus or a van or the fuel or the crew, and I put all those numbers into the spreadsheet and see where am I, if I can afford to get an hotel that is a bit more expensive, or to pay for a most luxury van, or if I can afford to bring a lighting guy or whatever. And I keep this constantly updated every so I basically there's a provisional budget and an actual budget. So every time I have an expenses for the tour, it goes into the budget, and I can compare and keep it under control. So at any time, I know exactly where we are with the budget, and I can tell the bands before the tour starts, how much money are they gonna make. Um, Obviously, you have to keep in mind that a lot of deals are based on the ticket sales. So what I do is doing projection of how many tickets I think we can sell on that specific show, and run my numbers. So what I'm doing is, okay, if we sell that amount of tickets here, that amount of tickets here, and that amount of tickets there, this is what you're gonna make at the end of the tour. And then every week I get sales figures from every promoter. I can see how that is affecting the budget for the tour. So if there's a show that is not selling well, then I have a promotional budget that I use for shows that are not performing well, to push on the promotion. So now it's something I have completely under control in a very nerdy way. Before it was just, okay, let's go and play.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said,
yeah, I remember you started this system even back in 2014.
yeah,
I remember you had that little notebook with a spreadsheet, and also already this idea to spend money on promotion for shows that weren't performing well
yeah,
in terms of ticket sales. And yeah, I mean, what kind of, because you said you have everything under control like this, but what does that mean? Say you have like an unexpected huge expense,
yeah.
right? Which tools do you have to sort of counteract something like that? Do you have means to actually make more money on some shows if you, I don't know, if you do
Not really.
whatever? Probably not.
Not really, because when you, I mean, the tour I'm on it now was, well, let's say now with the pandemic is a little different, but let's say I normally start booking a tour 1 year before, 1 year in advance. So all the budget is built 1 year before the tour gets on the road. So even before the very first expenses. So there's not much you can predict about that. And the budget you have is the budget you can build up from the shows, from the revenues of the shows. I mean, it can be ticket sales, it can be merchandise. With some artists, it can be the VIP experience, which helps a lot to pay expenses, basically. But the way I build the budget is always with a higher provisional amount of money than what I'm gonna spend. So I'm prepared to have surprises. Yeah. Obviously, if you have an unexpected huge cost, then that's a problem, because maybe you can partially cover it with this extra budget. But if it's a lot of money, it will mess up the whole budget and the whole tour financially. So there's not much I can do there. I try to prevent any possible surprise. We have insurance on the tour, on the gear, on health, on everything. So if something happened, I try to be covered. If someone break into the van or into the trailer of the bus and steal all the gear, I'm covered. So then the problem is okay, how are we gonna play tonight? But that's another problem. It's probably a different kind of problem. But I know about many tours that had some major unexpected expenses, and they went completely default financially because of that. So and because each tour is different, is completely different, even with the same artist. You have to just go with the flow, adapt and adjust, and be ready to take action, because you have a plan, but this plan 95% will change. So you have to be flexible, and the artist has to be flexible. They have to. I mean, this was also something I've been very lucky, because I always worked with artists that were flexible and understood when something went wrong or something didn't work properly.
Yeah, but I think like maybe one of the main features of how you work is that the way you radiate some sort of stability. Like people kind of like see you as the beacon of light there. Like there is you kind of like give the stability, but I can also now see that how you manage that for yourself with the business plan, with the spreadsheet that you update all the time. So that you have some sort of safety net for yourself as well. So I guess that allows you to kind of like, like you act calmly most of the time, right? Even if you're stressed. I mean, I've experienced you stressed, of course.
But, I can get really stressed. But I had experiences of tour managers freaking out and explode in rage because something wasn't right or something didn't work. And I've learned very quickly that it doesn't work. It just put everybody in a bad mood, and it's not fixing anything. It's just a you know it is completely useless. And maybe also because of the way I am, I keep calm. I'm able to keep calm. Then I get really stressed, but I'm able to keep things calm and probably absorb all that stress. Then I need to to let it out somehow. But it helps me a lot because sometimes it's just I know that I've been through many situations where other people would have just exploded, and and for me it was different.
Hmm. How do you budget yourself into the whole system? Let's say, like, how do you pay yourself?
Well, as an agent, I get a percentage on what the artists make on the show, and then when I go on tour with the band, I get a wage, a daily wage, like any other person in the crew.
I see.
There are tours where I only do the booking and I'm not going on tour, and there are tours where I do both, and there are tours where I only do tour manager and I'm not booking the tour myself. Sometimes I work for other for artists that I don't represent myself, or that I don't book myself. It's not happening often lately, but I've been doing this for quite some time. So yeah, that's normally how it works.
Yeah. So let me ask you about, like, obviously our business has been disturbed a lot by the pandemic, and what would be interesting to me is if you tell us a little bit about how you did, like, the first tour last year with Pineapple Thief,
Mm.
when there were still the pandemic conditions, right? So what did you need to do? What kind of restrictions were there, and how did you navigate them?
Well, that's actually not just back in the fall 2021. It's also now because we're touring right now. We're at the end of this second leg of the European tour, and it's pretty much the same situation or very similar situation than in October. So we had this tour planned for the fall 2020 when the um, when the pandemic hit Europe. We had to postpone it. So we split the tour into one leg that was planned for October 2021 and a second leg in late February into late March 2022. Um, and then it's been just roller coaster, up and down, new wave, ease of restrictions, then new wave, and everything closed again. Then we suddenly got to the summer 2021, and they started to lift the restrictions, but for outdoor shows, not for indoor shows. Nobody was thinking about indoor shows. This was the big problem with the pandemic for our business, not just the fact that you couldn't play shows, which is absolutely reasonable. The fact that there was no way to make plans early enough, because you need time to book a tour, you need time to put on a tour, and we didn't have this time. I mean, we knew that okay, if you go out now, you can play in this place, in this place, in that place, but in 3 months from now, you have no idea if you can still doing it. So when we got to the summer 2021, I remember late August. The tour was starting at the end of September, and late August, we still didn't know how many shows we could perform. So my nerdy spreadsheet was very helpful in that situation because I could, make different options, different plans, and see, okay, what happening if we have to cancel this show? What happening if it's not only this show, but it's also this other one and that other one? So I did some projections, I ran some numbers, and I knew that with a certain amount of shows, we could have make it. We decided to go out on the road when it was like we were 4 weeks out of the tour. So 1 month before, we decided, okay, let's do it. And I mean, things were looking good enough to do it, even with restrictions. There were still restrictions in some countries like Germany. There were still restrictions. Holland, France. It was restrictions pretty much everywhere. So we had to cancel a couple of shows and postpone a few others. So we ended up with more days off during the tour, and days off are crazy expensive because you have to pay for hotels, you have to pay for a bus that is parked up somewhere, so you have more expenses. But we managed to absorb these extra expenses and to go out on tour. I think the Pineapple Thief was one of the very few bands that went on a cross-border international tour in the fall 2021. And that we were one of the very first to deal with a post-pandemic world and a post-Brexit world, because the band is British. So Brexit happened and it completely changed everything for touring artists, but no one really experienced that because it was during the pandemic. So we learned what it was to deal with Brexit, and we were actually really lucky because the restrictions in most countries got lifted just before the shows. So one night we played Munich, and until a few days before, you could only play shows with a seated audience with face mask. And then, so we put seats in the venue. And then 2 days before the show, or the day before the show, this rule changed. And so it wasn't not necessary anymore to have seats in the venue, but it was too expensive to take them out. And we already hired them, and so we just let them there. And during the show, Bruce, the singer, said, okay, we're not supposed to be seated anymore. The rule has changed 2 days ago. So if you want to stand, you can stand. And the whole room stand up and went in front of the stage. And that was a great moment. I wish I had a camera in that moment, because it was really, okay, this is changing now. We're going over.
Wonderful.
Yes. Then, so we managed to do the whole tour, and then 10 days, not less than 2 weeks later, I was supposed to go on tour with another band, also in Europe. But at that point, the Omicron variant was spiking up, and in one day I got 4 shows canceled in just one day because of new restrictions. So 3 days before we started the tour, we had to decide to pull most of the shows. I think we did 7 shows out of 25. Because
wow. Which band was this?
That was Soen. So we managed to do 3 shows in Denmark, just because they still didn't have any restrictions in Denmark, and because the band is from Sweden, so it was easy to drive. And then we did shows in Spain and Portugal, because they were also there were still no restrictions there, so we made it just in time. I think Spain put up restrictions right after the band performed the shows in Spain, and same did Portugal. There was something change right after the shows. So it was really the right moment. We saw the opportunity to do the tour with Pineapple Thief in that moment, and we just took it, even if the conditions were not the best, even if we knew that the ticket sales would have been affected big time because of that. We still, they we were on the same page. They wanted to go out and play, and I felt it was safe enough to go out and play, and we did it. And now we're on the second leg, and it was exactly the same. We started on February 23rd. That was the first show. On January 15th, out of 25 shows, we were able to perform only 7 of them because of the new restrictions. But things were starting to change because there was this spike was already start going down in some countries. So we kept waiting, and at the beginning of February, it was already okay. Most shows were possible. We only have maybe 3 or 4 shows that were still not possible at the beginning of February. So 3 weeks before the tour started. And then by late February, restrictions on those countries also got lifted. So we're now doing all of the shows we were supposed to do, 25 out of 25, which is great. But again, we are obviously affected by COVID. I mean, you were in Berlin the other night, and you saw yourself. You had to be vaccinated, and you have to take a test to get in. And there's a lot of people who doesn't want to do it. There's a lot of people who's not vaccinated. There's a lot of people who doesn't feel comfortable to be in a room with hundreds of other people around, even if they are tested or vaccinated. So it's affecting the shows a lot. But we figure, okay, what are the options we have? We can move the tour again, and the next window was in the spring 2023. So move it for 1 more year. We didn't feel it was the right choice. I mean, yes, most bands, I think 98% of the artists, they just pushed everything. Okay, we're not gonna make enough money, we'll push it. It's not safe enough, we'll push it. Let's wait until things will come back to normal. But we don't know if things will come back to normal at all. I mean, we're just jumped from a worldwide pandemic into a war, or into a possible war. We have to live the moment. This is what I learned from these 2 years of pandemic. We have to live the moment and take the chance when we can, because we don't know what happens tomorrow. So this tour we were able to do the tour now, even if money-wise we've been heavily affected by the pandemic, but we did it. We're doing it, and it's doing great. And I'm so glad we went for this decision. I feel lucky to work with musicians who really wanted to go out on tour and play the shows.
So are you testing the crew and the musicians like every day, every other day, or?
Yeah, we have a very strict COVID protocol on tour, which basically is a bubble. So we all live together in the tour bus. We all share the same spaces, as you can probably hear around me. So our group is a bubble. The space where we live is the bubble. So the bus is a bubble. The dressing room is the bubble. Every time we are next to somebody who's not part of our bubble, we wear masks. We test every 2 days. We have those self tests that you do yourself. So every 2 days we get tested, and on the tour bus we have now. I asked the company to build a separate room with 2 beds So in case anyone tests positive, we we have a safe place separated from everybody else where we can quarantine uh, in case we need to, or even if someone just feels sick. There's a special room, and then just what we learned on in these 2 years of pandemic. So hand sanitizers everywhere, and I mean after 2 years of pandemic, I think we learned what and we have to how we have to deal with, and it's all about a good hygiene practice. Wash your hands, keep the mask. That's it. That's really uh, so, and it worked out. It worked in October. Actually, October we did a tour, and was the first time in my life where I did a tour and no one got sick. Because you know this very well. Normally on tour, one gets sick, and then everyone uh, get it, because it's someone gets a virus from outside, he brings it into the van or into the bus, and within a week everyone has that virus. Then for someone is bad, for someone is nothing, for someone else is uh, something in between. But that tour in October was the first tour I ever did where no one got sick, just because we were keeping our hands clean and wearing a mask and being away from everyone. Obviously, this also affected the tour financially, because we had these VIP tickets upgrade that are a very important financial support for the tour, and we had to cancel them because it
I
was
see.
too dangerous. I mean, it would have been too dangerous to meet every night 20, 30 people, take photos, and it didn't feel like the safest thing to do in that moment. The other option was to cancel the meet and greet. You only do or cancel the photo. You keep distance between the band and the people who bought the VIP ticket, but that would be a different experience than what people was expecting. So we decided to instead then just change the thing. Uh, we just decided to cancel it, and obviously it affected the tour financially, but there was no other choice. I mean, if someone gets infected during the tour, you can only imagine what happened. I mean, you will have to cancel shows at the last minute. You end up with insane amount of expenses that you're not able to cover anymore because you don't have the revenue from the shows that you're gonna play, that you have to cancel. So it will be a complete disaster. This is something that I mean, when we canceled the VIP ticket, most of people understood the reason, but we still got messages from fans that were kind of upset because the band wasn't coming out to say hi to the audience, or to shake hands or take photos, or especially the ones who are waiting outside the venue to get an autograph. We had to keep everyone safe,
Yeah.
and sometimes people don't understand this. If I get infected when I'm home, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, it's just a matter of my health. But I'm home. I take off. If I have an office job, I get sick. Fine. I take sick day, and I still get paid. And fine, I'll be home for a week. If we get infected, if someone gets infected while we are on tour, it it will be a financial disaster, other than any other health um, issue that you might have because you got sick. So
Yeah. 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 Isn't it amazing? Like we were saying, that your whole job is about like making compromises and finding negotiating between different parties. And now with COVID, there is this meta problem, right? That you need
Yeah.
to navigate. And it's fascinating, Francesco, how you're dealing with this. And I agree with you totally that I think we need to make sure that whenever we can actually find that compromise, right, we can find a way to do the shows, play the shows, we should do it.
Yeah.
And at that point, it doesn't matter if a fan is unhappy about not getting an autograph, right? Like it's about the whole thing. And I think thinking about like people your age, my age, 2 years is not that much of a time for a break, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
still okay somehow. But if you're thinking about people who are in their 70s, right? And you realize that, like maybe they have to take a rest for 2 or 3 years, that may actually mean the end of a career.
Yes.
And I think we also need to think about these things when kind of like trying to establish these cultural events again.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, even for people our age, it's still. I mean, when I this morning we're in Oslo today, and we played this same venue in February 2020, 2019. And I was talking with the promoter just an hour ago, and I was saying, "Oh yes, last year when we were here, I remember this dressing room." And then I suddenly realized it was not last year; it's 3 years ago. In my mind, it's last year. In my mind, 2019 is last year, but we're in 2022 now, and those 2 years that we have lost professionally, because we obviously those 2 years were years that we leave, but on a professional point of view, we have lost 2 years. Um, no one is giving them back to us, regardless of how old you are. Yeah, of course, if you are 20 years old, you probably deal with that in a different way. But uh, for me, I mean, I'm 41, and it's like, uh, okay, I've lost 2 years. I can feel that, and I can imagine for people in their 60s, in their 70s, this is a lot more uh, than how it is for me. So yeah, I mean, what other option we have? Keep postponing, keep pushing tours because it's still not the right time, and then what? Fifth wave of COVID-20, what will become COVID-21 or war or who knows? And this also throw me back into what is the sense of what we do. This is obviously, we're professionals. This is our job, and it's obviously business is a lot related to business, but it's also music. Is something that is absolutely not related to any business, and it brings joy to the audience. It brings joy to musicians on stage. I see this every night, especially in the countries where restriction has just been lifted. How happy is the people to be at the show and to finally be in a live concert again. And this is all we need. This is not about money. It's not about this. I don't care about that. The this feeling of joy and happiness from the audience and from the band who was finally able to be on a stage again and play and create that connection with the audience is priceless. And keep pushing because we're not gonna sell all the tickets we want to sell. I think it's just uh, too businessman way to think.
Yeah. And I would also think that this joy that is being brought back into our lives. I'm not saying it really will, but because I don't know, but it should make us stronger also. It
Yes,
will make us, it will make us stronger. It will get us out of the depression, and literally will give us more strength to survive, I think.
absolutely, and it gives more value to what we do, because I don't know about you, but for me, when in March 2020 everything was gone, suddenly I was on tour. I was in South America in February 2020. I flew back home, and I live in Italy, so that was the very first European country to be affected. uh, I flew back home, and 3 days later we went into a full national lockdown, and suddenly I was thrown from doing my life, be able to travel, to to go out with the bands, and suddenly everything was switched off, and with no idea of when it would be possible to resume uh, this life. And it, it, now that I'm able to do it again, I give a lot more value to what I'm doing, just because now I know, okay, we give things for granted all the time. We never thought that getting into a plane was something that it would have been possible. I mean, we until 2 years ago, we lived in a world where you can go to an airport, buy a ticket, and fly wherever you wanted to go with no any restriction. And suddenly it's not like that. It hasn't been like that for 2 years, and it's still not like that, because you still cannot go in many places. Uh, and it was normal for us to, okay, where do you want to go this weekend? Wanna go out and wanna go to Paris? Just go on online, buy the ticket, and fly to Paris the next day. Now you cannot do it anymore. Now that we are allowed to do it again, we need to keep that in mind, that the freedom we have, it's it's huge. It's something that we shouldn't give for granted. We can do it now. We can do it today. We should do it today, not keep postponing. I mean, I know I'm repeating myself, but this is really what I learned um, in those 2 years. I kept, because uh, my life. I mean, the way I plan my life is based on the tours. It's always focused on 6 months, 1 year. So, okay, I'm doing this tour. Then I go home, and I'll be thinking about, okay, next tour is going to be in the fall 2023. So this is what I need to do. And I keep planning, 1 year in advance. And I'm not planning on the short term. Now I know that, of course, when it comes to tours, I still need to plan 1 year in advance. But when it comes to my life, it has to be day by day. And that's
It has
something
to be now.
it has to be now.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Francesco, thank you so much. These are really wonderful words to end the conversation, and like quite motivational and wonderful to hear that from somebody who has, made making compromises his life. So, like, especially with this background of your skill, and of your work, these words are very, very powerful, and they. Yeah.
Well,
Thank you, Francesco. And
thank you, Marcus.
I know that you have to go, but it was a pleasure to talk with you for this.
Was a pleasure for me as well. It's all things that are in my mind, but sometimes until you take them out and tell to somebody, you don't even think about it too much. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to open my mind a little bit and make my toes coming up.
Wonderful. Thank you, Francesco. So
Thank you,
bye
Marcus.
for now. Yeah, bye.
Yeah, bye bye.